Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar featuring Duncan Armstrong. I'm sure we'll have a great night. Before we get started, I'd just like to give you a few housekeeping rules about how to operate your system. You'll notice on your screen you'll have a panel, and it'll look something like is on the screen currently. So on the desktop, it'll be in your upper right-hand corner. So all the attendees will be muted. You can submit text questions to the presenters by typing questions into the panel in your control. You can see the questions box that's open there on the screen, which will be really on your top and right-hand panel. So send questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collate those questions and they'll be answered in the Q&A section at the end. Tonight's session will be around 35 minutes from Duncan and then 15 minutes of your questions answered. If you're operating on a desktop computer and you want to make the panelists larger, because at the moment you'll have the slide that's the largest point on the screen, largest item on the screen. There's a grey bar running across the top just under the image of Duncan. Grab that, slide it down, and you will see a bigger image of Duncan, and the slide will become smaller. That's about it. I'd just like to introduce Duncan now. As you know, Duncan's a well-known Australian. He's an Olympic and Commonwealth Games gold medalist, world record holder, media commentator, and corporate speaker. He's been Young Australian of the Year, has received an Order of Australia medal, and has successfully inspired countless others to achieve their highest corporate and personal goals. Above that, he's a dad of 5 kids, and we're very pleased to have Duncan as an ambassador of the Fathering Project. So welcome to Duncan.
Thanks very much, Wayne. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've recently come on board as an ambassador of the Fathering Project, and I guess my fatherhood and the way I show up as a dad is probably one of the most important things in my life. I've got 5 kids. I've been married a couple of times. My 2 older sons are now 29 and 28, and my 3 younger kids, as you can see, is Ava, Noah, and the little fellow there is Isaac, my beautiful wife Rebecca. So the Fathering Project, I think, is very, very important work. It's not, like I said before, it's a real privilege to be representing the brand, because representing the brand is something very, very important, and it's always been spelt out to me from a very, very early age what it means when you shake hands with a brand and you bring your personal brand and you start wearing somebody else's, and what that actually means. And I guess my journey in all that space was as a young man coming through the Laurie Lawrence swim team and seeing all the champions that were on that swim team, like the world champions, the Olympic champions, how they wore that Australian brand and what that Australian brand meant to them to make the swim team, to wear the green and gold. And the statistics around the green and gold in swimming are unbelievable. They only give 36 tracksuits out, green and gold tracksuits out every 4 years for the Olympic Games, or 5 years for the Olympic Games, which is now heading to Japan in 2021. Thank you to COVID. So I was always fascinated by that dynamic, because 36 tracksuits every 4 years. The race I wanted to swim was the 200 meters freestyle. And so that took 1 minute and 47 seconds. So the equation was to get one of those 36 jerseys is 1 minute and 47 seconds on one day every 4 years. That's the exam. If you're a 10th of a second slower or a 20th of a second slower, your dreams for that 4 years might not come true. So it was a really, really brutal test. And that's where all the training and the hard work and the motivation and all that kind of thing comes into it, is that you got to get that equation through your mind, normalize it, train for it, and hopefully execute your best race to be able to achieve that. And people talk about the Olympic gold medal and the world champion, world record holder, world record swim, but really my greatest moment in my swimming was when I pulled on one of those green and gold tracksuits. And it's really, really fascinating to think about that and what it does for you, because getting back to that brand of being a dad, brand of being a father, what kind of brand you want to show up in, that brand of the Australian Olympic team, it's almost like permission. So you've got the kangaroo, you've got the emu, you've got the wattle, you've got the coat of arms, and then you've got the Olympic rings under it. And when you win one of those tracksuits and you get to put it on for the first time, that's the point where you're making a deal with your brand in your heart and who you are as a person with that brand. And that brand's been around since 1896, and great people have worn that brand. And because you've now got a tracksuit on and you get that brand, and all brands go over your heart for a reason, because that's, you know, that's where your spirit comes from. And so you put that brand on, it touches your skin, and you shake hands and you make that deal with that brand, and you stand in line and gives you permission to stand in line. And you stand shoulder to shoulder with everybody in history since 1896, all the greats, all the amazing names that we've seen at the Olympic level. You are now standing in line with them, and you're one of their teammates. And also running off the other side is everybody who's ever going to wear it. So this is your place in line. And this is where you get the choice to actually improve that brand with your talent, perseverance, endurance, team spirit, your focus, your goal setting, and your hard work. You've got to do the work, okay? And so this is your place. And then it's up to you. I'm wearing the brand, it's now touching me, my brand meets its brand, am I going to improve it? Fatherhood is exactly the same way. When we have our kids, we almost make a deal with them. I'm going to be your dad, and this is my place, and you've given me permission to enter the ranks of being a father with all the other fathers. And so where am I drawing my, how am I realizing my potential as a dad? Where am I drawing my information from? Where am I doing the hard work? Where in my network am I being invested in? Like in my sports career, when I had coaches and psychologists and dietitians and all this myriad of professional people focusing in on, like I said, 1 minute and 47 seconds on one day every 4 years. Where am I going to go as a dad to realize my potential, to make sure that my brand as a dad is improving all the time and is being aligned to my values and the values that I want to teach my kids and lead my family with? So when I look at the Fathering Project and everything they've got online, everything that they're producing out there, I look at it very much like my swimming or sports career or my television career or my career here in corporate life with Telstra and other corporate partners that I work with. I look at where in my network am I being invested? Where am I investing in my network to make sure it's coming back the same way in a boomerang effect? And then how am I uplifting my brand as a person, as a man, and especially as a father in all those areas? So during these times of COVID-19, you know, it's really rocked me. I don't mind saying it and I don't mind sharing it, that these conditions have really, really rocked who I am and what's my identity around that in the weirdest way. No one can ever plan a COVID-19 because it's the first time we've ever been sent home. It's the first time a pandemic has ever sort of like had this effect globally. And I struggled with it. You know, at first I thought this is a great adventure. I tricked up my house. I did all those jobs I've been meaning to do for 5 years. Finished all the projects that have been sitting in my garden shed. My lawn looks amazing. The garden looks on fire. I've done the gutters. I've sprayed the roof. I've done all these sort of things. And that was the first week. Okay, I got into a training program at home, did my garage work for 7 days. And then by about day 8, day 9, I could really feel that this could take a long time. I really could feel that I'm starting to lose things and lose my network and feeling very isolated, getting a little bit slower, not communicating as high. And I went through about, 10 days of sort of like not really feeling sorry for myself, but having a bit of a funk going on. Until again, I reached out to my network and sort of started to contact people and spoke to them regularly and got onto the 2 Calls, 2 Dads that we launched yesterday here in Brisbane for the Fathering Project, and did a couple of key things that sort of bounced me out of that. And then I went back to what I used to always do in my swimming career. And I've got around about 20 or 30 stories of people who've done extraordinary things in sport and have overcome extraordinary things to get into that sport. So their life story is very motivational. Very inspiring, I should say. And I feel motivated every time I watch it. And these stories used to help me in my swimming career. And I went back to these stories, especially in the last couple of weeks, just to get going again, just to get back to being who I am, where my talent is, where my strength is, where my courage is, and to be resilient into what's going on globally and how I'm reacting to it, okay? Because it's still putting me on tilt, I don't mind saying. So I'm going to share these 3 stories, just 3 stories out of the 20 that I use. And this is my encouragement for everyone on the call. If you're watching this, you've been motivated and inspired by people or circumstances or someone in your passion areas or your life, okay? We've all felt it, whether you follow rugby league or whether you follow netball or whatever you're into, okay? You've been sitting there and you've been overcome with emotion from something that's truly inspired you. Okay, some story on My World of Sports, some story that you saw on Fox, some story that you saw in politics, whatever your passion is. Okay, you've been inspired. Now I want you to sort of work out, why did that inspire me, and dig down into it and sort of go back to that inspiring story, or go back to that place where you became inspired, and work it into a story for yourself that motivates you all the time, and that you can watch for 10 or 15 minutes whenever you're feeling down, to bounce you back up to an area that you can cope with. So I want to share 3 or 4 stories that always work for me. Okay, and the first one, Kenny, if you want to put that first slide up, please, mate, comes to us 52 years ago. 52 years ago, at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics, John Akawiri was one of the first Olympians ever for the little African country called Tanzania. Now, Tanzania could see their next door neighbours, Ethiopia, winning the World Championships, winning the last 3 or 4 Olympic Games with people like Abiba Bikila and Mama Waldi and all these fantastic Ethiopian marathoners. So they got a bit sick of that, and they said, 1968, we're going to send our first team. Who have we got to send? And they came up with John Akawiri, who was not a bad marathoner, wasn't really world ranked, but coming into it, he had a bit of a chance to start with the main group, maybe. So they gave him that Kmart t-shirt, that is Kmart singlet that he's got on, that says Tanzania, okay? And they said, John, you're going to the Olympics, congratulations, we'll see you later, because they had no money to send him. And so he caught trains, planes and automobiles and did a lot of jogging between Tanzania and Mexico City. It took him 4.5 months of travel, and he got to Mexico City. So it's a 5,500 kilometre trip. And he got to Mexico City, and they're lining up the marathon, and there's world champions, there's Olympic champions, there's about 30 guys running. They ran it at night in Mexico to escape the really, really heavy duty humidity. And so they're standing on the line, ready to go, bang, off goes the gun, and 42 Ks in front of them, off they run. Big crowds were there with drink stations and barriers and police escorts and all this sort of thing. Now, about 18 kilometres into it, so they've got 24 kilometres to go, 18 kilometres into it, John's keeping up. He's in the second group, running along. Anyway, he slips in the dirty gutter in Mexico City, slips over, falls over and dislocates his knee, stuffs his ACL. So he's dislocated his knee, and as he's dislocated and it's popped out, it's straightened his leg and he can't bend it. So he's sitting there on the street, all the other competitors run on, and John's sort of floundering around like a sort of a beach whale on the street, trying to bend his leg, trying to get up. The ambos come in, put their stretcher down, they get John Akawiri, the African athlete, and they roll him on top. And just as they go to pick him up, he rolls off the other side like a commando style, jumps up and goes to run away again, but his leg is still stiff, so he falls over again. The ambos think it's a bit of a language problem between them and the African athlete, so they run after him again, they put him on again, he does the commando style, roll off again, he finally gets up, there's a bit of a bend in his leg this time, they popped it back in, his dislocated knee, so he's feeling a bit okay, they put that dodgy bandage around his leg, and he starts to, go on, but they're still chasing after him with the stretcher. Anyway, after they dance around the street for about 15 minutes, the ambos just give up, right? And off John goes. And so John Akawiri falls over, walks, gets a bit more bend of his leg, jogs a little bit, falls over. So he's having a really hard time with it, and he's falling further and further and further behind all the competitors who are at marathon pace. So they're off. Anyway, so the drink stations are leaving, the barricades are leaving, the crowd's going home, and John Akawiri is getting lost in Mexico City at night. Not good. One off-duty policeman clocking off for the night, hears over his radio as he pulls his car in to knock off after his shift, hears about this crazy African athlete trying to finish his marathon and getting lost. So gets in his car, goes and finds John. He knows, like the policeman knew the course, puts him back on course, just tells him just gets John to follow him in the dark with his lights on. Away they go. Anyway, everybody's starting to hear about John Akawiri because he's an hour late. Okay, out of the 110,000 people in Mexico Stadium that night for the track and field, 110,000 people have basically gone home, and only 6,000 people are stuck around to see John finish. Out of the 6 lights at the stadium, they've left 2 on for him, and finally he gets there an hour and 15 minutes late. He's covered the 24 kilometres with a busted cruciate and dislocated knee. He gets there, he goes down, it's all on YouTube. Everything I'm going to talk to you tonight, you can find on YouTube. He goes down to the stadium, he runs around, falls over the finish line, done, okay? The press run in, they say, why did you keep going? What is this all about? And John looked at him perplexed because he couldn't understand why they would ask us such a silly question. And he said through an interpreter, my country didn't send me 5,500 kilometers to start a race. My country sent me to the Olympics to finish. It's a good story. It's a great story. One of the biggest losers at the Olympic Games, 52 years later, is still telling us all about getting his why right. Like John Akawiri had a why he went to the Olympic Games. Okay. Now we would have all thought, oh, busted cruciate, dislocated knee, 18 kilometers in, mate, what bad luck, how terrible. But his why was stronger than everybody else's. So he got to display his determination about that goal, his goal, and override everybody else's what was acceptable or permission to go and finish the race. And he's, like I said, he's one of the biggest losers probably in the Olympic scene since 1896, but it's such a great lesson on how we've got to cope with things that go wrong, okay? Because there are going to be things that go wrong in our fathering, being a dad, you know, but we've got to get why we're doing what we're doing. You know, why do we sit up reading to our kids? Why do we get them to bed, you know, with a big fight sometimes at 7 p.m? Because we know they need that sleep for the next day. You know, it would be a lot easier if they just sat on the screen on the TV and you got to hang out with your wife and, you know, had that time at the end of the day, which you're desperate to have yourself. But we've got to show endurance to be there for our kids, to get them into bed. You know, why do we make the decisions we do around what sport they play and how deeply you get into that sport, and how if you've got a kid that shows talent in sport or music or mathematics or gaming or whatever it is, how we have to control that in a way that we've really got to show endurance to get to the end of our race, to get into why it's our why, how we have to sit down with our wives and our partners and our spouses and sit there and go, well, where are we going and what are we doing, and are we prepared to do the work, because it's going to take a lot of work to get there and raise our kids and be a family while the world sort of pulls us apart with all these other distractions and clickbait. And so John Akawiri's story is fantastic because it really teaches me what is my why. And even if it's counter to everybody else's why, you know, have I got the endurance to go and do it for myself and my family? Okay, so John Akawiri is a really, really big, yeah. How's our time going? I'm on time? Great. So that's John Akawiri. The second one I want to talk about is team focus, okay? And it goes back to the family like I've just been talking about. And this is about Gillian Rolton. And Gillian Rolton went to the 1996 Olympic Games, already an Olympic gold medalist. Gillian Rolton became an Olympic gold, our first Australian, Aussie, equestrian woman gold medalist. So she was the first ever woman for Australia to win a gold medal in equestrian. And she did that in Barcelona in 1992. So heading into 1996, we had a really great team. We were sitting in third place as we came up to the last event on the program, which was the cross country. And in Atlanta, in Georgia, for 1996 Atlanta Olympics, the cross country course was 5 kilometers long and 18 jumps. So by the time Gillian, our last competitor, got on Peppermint Grove, her big grey horse, getting ready to run, Australia went from bronze medal place at the start of the cross country. By the time 3 riders had gone through, and Gillian was our last rider, we were in gold medal place. So Gillian had to finish on Peppermint Grove to win the gold medal at the end of the 18 jumps. And that's what it was. So that was what was in front of it. So she had this amazing team focus, because the gun goes, away she goes, Peppermint Grove and Gillian Rolton take on the 18 fences. But on jump number 3, Gillian came a gutser. Like, she came straight off Peppermint Grove and broke a collarbone. She didn't know she'd broken a collarbone. All she knew was one arm wasn't working, okay? Peppermint Grove was good enough to stand still, because if he runs off, that's the end of that. No gold medal for Australia, we lose. So Peppermint Grove stands still, Gillian gets up. All she knows is one arm's not working. That was jump number 3. Jumped again at jump number 4, and then fell off again at jump number 5, the water hole that you can see in that photograph. And she's come a gutser on that. So she already had a broken collarbone. Now she snapped 2 ribs and they punched her lung. So she gets back up, her side's hurting, her arm's not working, and she can't breathe. She's still got 3.5 kilometers to go, and she's got 13 fences, 13 jumps. Somehow she gets through it. So 13 jumps later, 3.5 kilometers later, Peppermint Grove and Gillian Rolton run across the line through the gates, and Australia wins the gold medal. She had such a team focus that it was going to overcome everything that had happened because she knew where she was going and what she needed to do. And she had that tunnel vision of focus. Now, coming out of the Olympic Games and after that, you know, she was quite a hero because, like, most inspiring story I've ever heard of having the team focus. And so she came out with this quote, and I love Gillian for this. You don't go to, this is Gillian Rolton, you don't go to the games to be a wuss. You don't go to the games to be a wimp. You go to the games because you've got to get through those finished flags for your team, no matter what. All right. Now, have you ever heard of a more Aussie quote than that? But anyway, so this is why I love Gillian Rolton, because things in my life, in my fathering, you know, broken marriage and all that kind of thing, and all the hardships that go on with being a weekend dad for my two older boys before I met my wife and my wife Rebecca, and we've got the 3 kids at home. And so I've had 2 kinds of fathering in my life. And so I've had the weekend stuff, which was really, really difficult to pour all that love out on the weekend and not have the boys with me all week. And now I have the whole picture with the 3 kids at home and that constant pressure to make sure that we're going in the right direction and we have our why right and stuff like that. So when I look at Gillian, she really inspires me to sort of say, what is my team focus as a dad, as a father, and as a part of this team, the Armstrong family team? And do I have a hard enough focus to get through things when we have a real check, where there's a health crisis, whether there's a problem, whether there's a financial setback, whether there's a career setback, whether there's a health setback for myself or a health setback for my family? So what is my team focus? And am I focused enough when things go wrong? And when things have gone wrong, I've gone back to this story and said, right, I don't know what's happening right now, but because I'm focused, we're going to get to the next step. Because this is a bad moment, this is a shitty moment, and there's a better moment around the corner if I can focus on that and get to it. And so it gives me great perspective that way. Now, the last story I want to share with you is all about kind of showing the courage to never quit. Kind of the next slide, please, champ. That's it. So this is a fairly modern story, and I came across it at the Rio Olympics. So this bloke is a Brazilian gymnast, and he was their best Brazilian gymnast for a very, very long time. His name's Diego Hipólito. And so Diego and his family are a family of gymnasts. His sister became the first world champion for Brazil, and he became the first male world champion, gymnast world champion Brazil had ever had in the 2005 World Championships. So Diego was on his way up. 2005, he was the world champion. 2007, he was the world champion. So he headed into the 2008 Beijing Olympics as the red hot favorite to win the gold medal on the floor routine, okay? 2-time world champion, whole family of gymnasts. Brazil was really riding high. And he got to his floor routine, got to the last run, you know, when they run across the floor and they go, you'll find on YouTube, go across the floor, and he slips on his last thing and lands on his bum. Okay, so he goes from the first place to 6th, and he really gets smashed, just because of one bad jump at the end of his routine. Really, really sad. So he went home, everyone was on his back. No one could believe he's gone from 1st to 6th in a matter of a millisecond. So he lines up 4 years later in London. And a lot has happened. He got depressed. He got over that. He got back into training. Everyone sort of got him there, and he's ready to go again. He's back in top form. He runs. He goes on the floor routine. He goes across the floor at the same time. Not the same routine. It's different 4 years later. But 4 years down the track, he's ready to win again. And at the same point on the last pass, he gets it wrong again, and this time he lands on his head. So he's landed on his bum in 2008. He's landed on his face in 2012, and he's had all these problems because of it, because he had so much expectation coming into this. But because the Rio Olympics was in his hometown, the Brazilians all got behind him. And before he was a young man, then he was sort of middle-aged for an athlete, and now he kind of like in the twilight, and he's in the swan song, but he gets to 2016, the Rio Olympics in his hometown. So he lines up again, and there's just so much expectation. And everyone's like dying for him to do well. And so it's all coming down to this. 12 hard years comes down to the last pass, and he gets it right. So in 2008, he fell on his bum, fell on his face in 2012. In 2016, he gets it right, and he wins a silver medal with one of his countrymen winning the gold. So it's gold and silver for Brazil. And he gets to live this dream that he's had for so many years. And he went through so much depression, so much turmoil, so much doubt, so much self-doubt, so much disappointment on a world stage with everyone looking, of course. But finally, he's got to reach his moment. And I look at Diego, and it's a modern day story of how you should never, never quit on yourself. Should never give up. You should always go forward and see if you can live your dreams, because they're your dreams. And sometimes fatherhood's a little bit like that too. I keep on coming back to fathering, but this is what this webinar is about. It's about me encouraging you to dig deep. So don't quit on who you think you are as a dad, and don't quit on all the good things that you could possibly give to your family because of it. Okay? Being a father is tough. It's mundane. It's boring. You know, sometimes the work is completely thankless. You know, if you've ever painted a wooden house, you know how thankless sometimes being a dad is. It's tough stuff. Some of the jobs that you have to do day in, day out to make sure that the family ship is floating along well, high in the water, okay? You're never going to be thanked for it. And I'll tell you a quick story. As a dad, and why I share these stories to encourage you, you have a brand, okay? And where you choose to live that brand is what you're going to be known for. And there's plenty of exercise you can do around this. You know, like there's the exercise you can do is that, what do you want people to say at your funeral? What do you want to be known for at your funeral? Write them down on a list, you know, basically the values that you've shown, the habits that you've displayed, the love that you've shared, and your brand of being a husband, being a father, being a mate, being a son, being an uncle, being a cousin, whatever it is. So there's an exercise you can do with that, okay? And you can also, along the way, you know, really latch on to things that you know add value, and they become your brand. So when my two boys, my two older sons, weren't living with me and I was a weekend dad, one of my sons, Tom, was becoming a swimmer. And so he was in a really good squad and he was going along really well. And then around about year 11, year 12 at high school, he had a bit of a chance to have a real red hot go if he wanted to apply himself. And so what I would do is I'd pick him up on Wednesday morning and we would go to the coffee club, and he would eat the entire menu at the coffee club. And I would sit there watching him consume this food thinking, wow. So anyway, that was our Wednesday morning routine. Now, when my first wife and I busted up, I was at arm's length as a dad. You know, I had to really scratch around and negotiate having the boys and stuff like that, like so many men have to do. I'm not bitter and twisted about that. That's just basically the reality of being a single dad in a divorce situation. So what I did is I promised myself that I wouldn't be late for the boys, not ever. Okay. That when when the pickup time was the pickup time and the drop-off time was the drop-off time, that's where I would be, and I would not negotiate it. I didn't care what happened with the other side, but basically I was going to be there on time. And so I did that, and that was my thing, okay? And it was only my thing to me. No one else needed to know about it, and I didn't tell anybody about it. So years and years go past, and I show up on Wednesday morning to pick Tom up so he can go and eat the coffee club. And there's no one in the water at the pool that he told me to be at. No one was there. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I looked around, I'm like, yep, no big deal. I just started to text him, okay, right on the time that I was supposed to pick him up, 7 o'clock. My phone rings before I could get the text out, and it's Tom, my son. And he says to me, oh, Dad, I forgot to tell you last night, we're at this other pool. I said, yep, no problem, mate, I'll be there in about 5 minutes. And then he says this one line, okay, and he says, I knew I'd made a mistake, Dad, because you weren't here at 7 o'clock and you are never late. Now, for me, as a dad, that still chokes me up, because that was my promise to me. That's where I wanted to show my endurance, my team focus on my boys, get my brand going as a dad, and never give up, okay? And he didn't know what he said to me, but what he said to me was basically right where I wanted my brand to be for my boys, that they would always know that I was going to be on time for them because they were important to me, no matter where I was or what we were doing together. If we had plans, they were happening, okay? Because that's what I could control about my fatherhood. So that sort of breaks down a little bit of what I wanted to go. If we go to the last slide, I just want to show the last 3 tips, because I think we're right on time with where I want to be. And so what I've tried to do tonight is basically give you some positive parenting in this COVID-19 chaos that we're all feeling. If you just want to go back one slide, Wayne, because back one slide? Yeah, because these are all great images of dads. And this is where we want to live, even though the world is sort of going crazy. If we just go forward one slide, Wayne, to that COVID-19 slide. You know, this is what we're all feeling, okay? We're together more than we've ever been. So we get to, you know, try to utilize this crazy time for our parenting and our fatherhood especially, and our partnership with our significant others, our wives and spouses and stuff like that. This has been difficult and it's been really, really hard, but there's been so many benefits that have come from it that our kids will remember if we can get this right. You know, we can sit down as a team in these COVID times and really flesh out what our team focus is, what our family focus is, and really talk about how we're going to have to show our endurance at tough times, and whether people are losing their jobs or whether people have to shut their businesses or whether they're no longer employed, or if you're apprehensive about what post-COVID looks like, whether the economy will recover or we're headed to a massive recession, wherever the fears lie, we can get together now as a family and really go through what it means to have a team focus, what it means to show our endurance, and what it means to sort of not quit on ourselves. And you get to be the team captain in that as the dad. So this is a very, very important slide, I think, when you look at all these dads doing the work with their kids and where we are at right now with the COVID conditions. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you. I just wanted to land these 3 tips with you as we go before we get into questions and answers and go forward. So the top 3 tips I wanted to show is focus on your why, like John Akawiri. What's your why as a dad, as a father, as a family leader, or as a leader in the community? What's your why? Get your why right. You know, crystal clear it. So when things happen, you get over those things as obstacles, not as things that are going to ruin you. Okay? Get your why right. Understand your place in the team. So if you're talking about, the way I look at that is, I'm very proudly and privileged to be the head of my household. Okay, I'm not the strongest in the family. My sons are stronger than me. Okay, and so I've asked them to help me with their strength and take care of us because they're the strongest in the family. So I understand my place in the team. I run a lot of the decisions in partnership with my wife, absolutely. But I have a real brand in my team, and I'm trying to bring that whole potential that I see with my values, where I want to spend my time, how I spend my money, and how I display my strength to my teammates, to my family. And then how I incorporate the strength of the team, as in my 2 sons, my 2 older boys, and how they then invest in us as a team to help me raise the 3 little kids coming through, but also lend their strength, because they're such big boys. I've bred these big boys, they're incredible, and stuff like that. So years ago, I handed over basically my position as the strongest in the family. I handed it over, and another dad sort of called me out on that and said, well, have you handed over the strength part of the family, because the boys now are stronger than you? Okay, and I really had to think about that and take my time about that. And then we had this little handover ceremony with the 2 older boys, and now they're partnering with me in the strength stakes to make sure our family rocks on, and it's not all up to me. Okay, and the 3rd thing there is, don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. Bad times don't last forever. Okay, neither do good times. So take advantage of the good times when they come, when you're in great form, when things are in a flow. We'll take that all day long, but get crystal clear on your why, understand the strengths of your team and where your place is in it, and never give up. Because if you got the first 2 right, the bad times will not last too long before you're focused and moving together in a flow state with your team. Okay, so they're the 3 things I'd love you to focus on. So I think we move into question and answer time now, don't we, Wayno?
Yes, thanks, Duncan. That's fantastic. And yes, we're ready for some questions, and we've already got some great questions. You'll notice on your control panel on the right-hand side that there's an opportunity to put questions in. So if you write your question in, and it'll come through to our team, and then I'll ask Duncan the question. So the first question that we've had already is from Michael. How do you get all the kids on the same team working together? I have 3 and 1 never wants to be part of the team.
A contrarian. How good's that? Yeah, my 14-year-old daughter Ava is just trying to take that space in our family too, a contrarian. So again, this is where the metal hits the road. Sorry, the rubber hits the road, or the foot or the pedal hits the metal. Anyway, this is where you really got to really test yourself as a dad. I've had my times with my kids where one really wants to get off track. So that's a real challenge for me. Like, obviously dealing with the one who wants to get off track, the way I'm dealing with the other two is probably not going to work with this one. Okay. Part of the reason, like my second last son, Noah, again, really tests his mother in this space. Like, he's our tester wolf. In every single pack, there's an alpha male, a female, and all this sort of, and there's one tester wolf, and that poor old tester wolf gets bitten, chomped, pushed, and jumped on all the time, because its job, and this is not a job I don't think anyone wants, is to test to make sure everyone's doing their job. So he'll push. Noah is our tester wolf. He makes sure that I'm doing a good job, his mother's doing a good job, and he takes us on all the time. So my challenge with Noah is to actually unlock the communication that he really responds to. So I've got to dig deep and work out, all right, what I'm doing with the other two is not working with Noah. What am I going to do? What am I going to do to actually ease up on him? Do I need to come around the side? And what's really worked for Noah is I've asked him to come on board like the other boys and give me his strength. So he just needed a job. Okay. And once I realized that Noah really responded to having a job that the other kids in the family don't have, that it's a kind of almost a special job for him, even though it's, not that important to do, for him, it's everything. Okay, so I've worked that out, that Noah needs to be incorporated, and I need to get alongside him collaboratively, okay, rather than directionally. So if I keep on sort of being directed at Noah, he just basically digs his heels in, puts his hands on his hips, and he goes, "Why should I?" Okay, I love him for his spirit. Like, how good's that? A little fella taking on a 6-footer. I love it, but doesn't work always, and his mother makes her back teeth ache. So what I do is basically come alongside and I go, "Hey, Noah, I really need your help on this. I can't do this all by myself. So I'm looking at you, mate. You've got the strength, you've got the ability, let's go," right? So I do a collaborative thing rather than sort of like, "You will do this because it's the right thing to do and because I said so." So sometimes we've got to tune out our thought process in the moment. And don't forget, Noah does things that I want to grab him by and throw him out a window. Okay, I won't do that because we don't do it. But I want to, and I feel it. And so sometimes it's a real chore, because I get tired too at the end of the day, and he digs his heels in at 7 o'clock at night when he's supposed to be going to bed. Difficult. So I've got to take a deep breath, and I've got to access my courage, access my resilience, my endurance, and my team focus, and sort of say, "You know what? I'm going to get this right. Hey, Noah, come over here because I need your help." And then we have this little chat, and he gets into bed and he's asleep 5 minutes later. So it does work, and we do have it inside us. We've just got to keep on trying our options of what we can do. Our kids are all different, and we made them that way, and so did the Lord. We've got to work out how we unlock and find that combination for each child, because as soon as I do that to Noah, his little brother goes, "Hey, I want to do that too, and that's not fair." But I've got to treat him differently because he's unlocked in a different way. His name is Isaac, and he just needs a lot of cuddles. And as soon as you're cuddling Isaac, he's asleep in 5 minutes. So we've got to unlock how we do it with our kids, and we've got to show our strength to make sure that we're not reacting through frustration, and we're accessing those parts of our fathering or fatherhood that really lights our kids up and brings us alongside, and they get tucked in tight because of it.
Thanks, Duncan. Actually, on the back of that question, we've got another one from Stephen about how do you involve your partner and your kids in developing the team approach?
Lots and lots of meetings over dinner table. So I use dinner, and we always sit down at night together. We really control screens at the end of the day. We really sort of stop all screens by about 4:30, 5 o'clock. They just need that break off the screens. And I work for a telco or a techco, so I'm on screens all day, and that's part of my job. So I've really got to display that they're important to me, and they're more important than screens, and we are more important than screens, coming the other direction. We've got to teach them that. So there's just this period of sort of like getting off screens, the dinner is getting cooked, and then at dinner, we have a lot of fun at dinner. Like we really sit down, we really say, "Hey, where are we going tomorrow? What are we doing this week?" We're continually resetting. And around this COVID thing, we're continually talking, not really what's on the news, because we don't watch the news really, we don't read the newspaper. I sort of have a disconnect around that. So we just talk a great deal over the dinner table, and we make sure that we're off screens coming into the dinner table, so we're already talking. So when we sit down at table, it's not, "Oh, now we're sitting down, now we've got to talk," and there's a real lag. between sports, being able to screen, talk, and get off the crack in our head. And so we sit down, we have this warm up or this run in away from screens into the dinner table, and then we talk. You know, we discuss where the meal is from, because my wife Becky's a great cook, and she'll cook all this international cuisine and all this sort of stuff. She loves it, and I'm the luckiest man alive. I have no idea how much I have to train to get away from my wife's cooking, but anyway, it's a lot. And so we'll talk about, you know, where this dish comes from, and I'll look it up, and sort of like, I like that kind of stuff. I like the history of food, and like, you know, being able to tell the kids. Then we do talk about their days, and we get them talking and laughing and giggling and things like that. And all of that is a reset in terms of where we're going, how we're going, are we living up to our team goals? And then we sometimes have a sit down, mess around, maybe twice a year, and we sit there going, you know, do we still want to live here? Are we happy at the school? We have this sort of like real reset. It's not structured, and they don't recognize it as structured, but there's structure in it, and I put it in there for a reason. So that's how we do it. We do it regularly, but we really make the dinner table at night something that they'll never forget. Okay. Sometimes we do it on the. We sometimes have a movie picnic, where we all get on the picnic rug in front of the TV, and that'll be on a Friday night. You know, just to really switch off and watch a family movie. Sometimes we eat up at the counter as well. So, but really, I would say on average 4 nights a week, we're at the dinner table sitting around like my wife Rebecca grew up, and like I grew up. So we've kept that generational habit going, and we find it really important for being set.
Thanks, Duncan. That coincides with the tips we've been providing through COVID around creating a family plan. If everyone knows what the plan is, it makes life a lot easier. So this 100%. One's for you. You seem a very goal-driven person. Do you have any current goals as a dad that you can share?
I don't have any. Back in the day, I really drove myself to lots of goals and stuff like that. And swimming's a very solitary sport, so it really sort of affected the way I approach all goals forever. So swimming's a very narrow sport, and like I broke it down in my opening, you know, it's 1 minute and 47 seconds every 4 years. You've got to be a narcissist to do it. That means you've got to burn out every friendship and every sort of balanced way of living to live that dream of the Olympic Games. So getting into real life after my swimming career, you know, I took that sort of hyper competition, hyper goal setting into everything I did, and I found for about 20 years, I really struggled with friendships and mateships and family dynamics and stuff like that, because I was always driving towards a goal. So I have to be very, very careful how I approach a goal. And so my goals these days are more about my behavior. Okay, so I want my behavior to reflect my values. Okay, and so one of the values I want to do is I want to be a great mate, and I want to be a great dad and a great husband, of course, and things like that. So I break down what are those behaviors, rather than sort of like, what's my goal? Okay, I'm going to be a super fit dad. What does that look like? And I burn everything out just to be fit. Okay, so I've got to be very, very careful there, because I've got this mechanism, and it's around narcissism, and once it becomes all about me, everybody loses. Okay, mostly me. So what I do is I really focus on my behaviors. You know, am I showing up on time? Am I actually listening? Am I being distracted by too many things from my work life? You know, have I transitioned from work to home on the drive home from work? So I've got a whole routine around these areas that I want to be my best at. Okay, so no, I don't have this goal that I want to have this many houses and this many properties and this. I don't have any of that anymore. It's all about, am I being supportive of my wife? Am I giving her enough attention? That goes for the kids. That goes for my career. That goes for my mateships and my friendships, my church, and where I spend my time, charity work, ambassadorships. So I'm very behavior driven, and I've got a very clear picture of how I want to be showing up. And I really love that Australian saying, you know, showing up, because we all have the enthusiasm. We've all got our own blend of enthusiasm, and it's our secret weapon, because if we show up enthusiastic, ready to do whatever we're showing up to do, we will get the job done. We'll have success. And that's where I live. Instead of writing out my goals and everything like that and being crystal clear, I'm really behavior orientated these days, and I'm really privileged to be in all the groups that I'm in, because it shows that my drive to be the right behavior is delivering results. Does that make sense? Hope so.
Great, thanks. I've got a couple of questions along the same theme here. One is anonymous, but how do you help your kids deal with failure? And the next question was around the line of, How do you deal with setbacks and help the family, especially kids, gain from your experience?
So I try not to give them too much of a soft landing. Kids need to fall over. Kids need to fail. You know, like one thing, what happens to us when we fail, we ponder it. When we lose something, or we actually wanted to do, or we have a wish to do something, and the world sort of shows us that we haven't done the work and we fail, you know, it's the most golden time to learn something. And so I don't want my kids, like, I'm not hard, I'm a real soft dad, don't get me wrong, but when they fail, or they don't make something, everything like that, I'm kind of happy about it, because the world is a tough place. And if we are always catching them, putting the pillow under them when they fall down and saying, oh, you know, someone cheated, or blaming something, or taking, you know, contests and stuff like that, we're doing them no favors, because the world's a tough place. And I don't want my kids coming out of university and thinking that the world is like university. You know, I want them to get a job at university. I want them to work the way through university and everything like that. I want them to work for their own car, the first car. I want them to, you know, get their own rent. They're going to be paying rent if they're going to be staying at my place. So I want them to have these real life experiences, and they only can have that if we let them fail a little bit. They'll always be safe. I'm always aware of what's happening, okay? But if I'm standing there and I'm watching my kid go in the cross country and he hasn't done any work for it, and he comes off 10th or 20th or last and has a bit of a cry, I just let him have a cry. I just give him a bit of a hug and things like that. Our kids aren't going to be good at everything, and we've just got to get used to that, because it's their life. Some of my kids swim. They all swim. Sorry, they all love swimming. But I doubt I'm going to get an Olympic champion out of any of them. I doubt I'm going to get an Olympic starter out of anything. I doubt if they'll wear the green and gold and things like that, because they've just displayed they just don't have the hunger for it. I'm ready. I'm ready to get them into it and do my work and find the right squad and making sure they're safe in that squad and making sure that, you know, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. But they're not showing the work of it. They much prefer to be around their friends. They much prefer to play all sports. They much prefer to do schoolwork. They much prefer to do music and be in the school play. They much prefer that. So I'm all in for that as well. I'm in for it, okay? And I'm still doing my due diligence, where they're going, what they're doing, keeping them safe, not taking my eye off the ball so if anything bad happens to them and things like that. I'm all in. But if they're failing, that means they're trying at something. And the failure will give them more feedback in terms of what life is about than sometimes their easy wins. Now, they're going to get their wins, and I'm going to celebrate them, and they're going to be important as well. But I just don't try to give them too much of a soft landing. But I'm a soft dad. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, thank you. This is from Terry. It's around individual differences that you just highlighted there with kids and their goals and aspirations. Terry says, I have one daughter who isn't motivated to get outside and exercise. What tips do you have to turn that around?
Yeah, I guess you got to got to find out where the chink in the armor is, if you want to put it that way, or where the beachhead is, or where the opening is, or where it is. So you've almost got to interview them, because again, my 14-year-old daughter is doing the same thing. The COVID thing has wrecked her social life. You know, she's such a social girl, and she's got these beautiful friends and goes to a great school. We're just so privileged in everything that she's doing, and the people that's in her life. And you know, I march into her room, and she's been in there 5 hours, you know, doing a screen work and everything like that, doing a schoolwork. She's ahead of it, which is a real. She's worked really hard during these times. And I just go, that's it, we're outside. And she looks at me and goes, I'm not going outside. I said, sweetheart, you've got to go outside. You know what's outside? Everything. And so I get in there and I use my enthusiasm. I use my, you know, and then I start bribing. If I got a bribe, I got a bribe. I go, come on, darling. If you come outside with me now, we're going to go for a drive together, which is a big win for me. I'm not too sure about her. I'm not too sure if she thinks it's a big win. But once we get out and moving, action sometimes breeds motivation. We've all felt it. You know, we've all got up, wanted to do some work or training or go for a run or go for a ride or go for something, and we don't feel like it. It's the worst thing we need. But I know that once I get pedaling, or once I get walking, or once I get running, or once I get to the gym, action breeds motivation. Okay, and we've got to introduce that to our kids, and we've got to call it out. And we've got to call it out and say, you know, sometimes when you just get moving, things get moving for you. You know, simple stuff to get them outside. See, you know, we've had some amazing weather up here in Brisbane. It's been incredible. So yes, it's a negotiation. yes, you've got to be overflowing with your enthusiasm sometimes. You've got to do it in your own way. It's got to be authentic coming from you. And you've got to give her the value, give him or her the value. I really want to go out with you because I want to talk to you. I think it'd be fantastic if I could be with you for the next hour as we go for a walk down the street. So you've got to sell the value that it's going to be for you, and then, if possible, tuck her under your arm, give her a hug and hopefully get her moving. And that's the way I do it. I just basically, I know my daughter very, very well, and she knows me. And so I will go and sell her an idea, and I'll go and fulfill that it's going to be okay, it's going to be great. And then I just keep, for want of a better term, bribing to get the result, to get her out, because I know that once she's out, the endorphins hit. Much better than being a screen. She transitions into the real world. The birds sing in the skies. Good. We've got a basketball hoop on the road. We live on a cul-de-sac at the moment, so we've got a basketball hoop out there, and she's pretty good at shooting it. So then I say, I will give you $1, Ava. I will give you $1 if you hit 3 baskets in a row. You could make a lot of money, and I promise I'll pay. So it's a bribe, right? But we get out there. She starts shooting around. The good news is, I'll just call out further and further and further and back until she starts missing. It doesn't cost me $50.
Great. This is from Daniel. Actually from Brian, sorry. I found COVID-19 to be extremely challenging. I feel a bit worn out wearing so many different hats at home at the moment. Do you have some advice?
Yeah. Maybe I should be asking advice from you, Brian. I think we're all doing it differently. I know I've really struggled with it. I hit the wall today. Like, at 3 o'clock, I could have sold my kids easily on Marketplace. We've been inside and together more than's comfortable for me. And it sort of goes like that, flows. 1 minute you're flying going, mate, this has been great. We've done this, and 2 hours later, you're sitting there going, oh, mate, I'm not coping at all. So again, it's just basically showing your endurance, digging in, getting to the next good bit, moving through the bad bits, understanding that they're going to come, and also understanding that the whole world's going through the same thing. But getting creative, now that things are loosening up, what does that look like? What effort are you going to put in to sort of get some disconnect in terms of what's really becoming difficult? Like, going from my office bedroom into the kitchen and back and back and back, and transitioning between meetings, corporate meetings, and schoolwork, and then getting the meals ready and doing it day in, day out is difficult, very difficult. Okay, but we're all in the same boat. So sometimes I'll call a mate just to have a disconnect. Okay, mate, what's going on? And we'll make each other laugh and giggle about the same things because we know each other well, we're deep, and I'll just feel better. So reach out to your mates, reach out to dads going through the same thing, especially guys who know you can have a good laugh. So you have a bit of a download, you spill your guts, you rummage around with it with your mate, you're in a safe place, and it all goes where it needs to. It's off your chest now, okay? And you've encouraged it. You encourage your mate, because no bloke ever went backwards from encouragement, okay? As the great Ian Watson would say. So that's what it's all about. You've got a network around you. You can move through your tough times quickly with the right call. So don't be afraid to pick up the call and say, mate, I am doing it tough, okay? I've had enough, and I'm going to sell all my kids. What's happening with you? And then you have a bit of a kick around, you have a bit of a laugh, and it's all good. So reach out to your mates.
Probably that's a good segue to the promotion that we're running, 2 calls, 2 dads at the moment, where you could actually reach out to other dads as well to check in on how they're going, and then the conversations will roll from there. We've had some great questions.
Yeah.
We've had some great questions tonight.
Have we got one more question, or are we going to go to the last slide?
A slide, yep.
Oh, okay.
Which is slide. That was it.
Yeah.
I was just going to finish.
So I thought we had a two calls, 2 dads slide. So 2calls2dads.org. It'll give you some great tips and great ideas about what's happening at the Fathering Project, but also with this program of being able to call two of your mates, 2 dads a week, and just having a bit of a download, have a bit of a chat. And there's a lot of ideas on that 2calls2dads.org site. And Petro Sivanasiva and myself launched it in Queensland yesterday. It was on the news last night with Sharon Gadella on Channel 7. And it's just our way of sort of investing in that COVID space that we're feeling at the moment. and hopefully building those habits that get your brand going as a dad with a great network of dads, and how you get out and encourage other blokes during tough times, which we're into. So have a look at that.
Thanks. I think that's a great way to finish off this evening. We're out of time. We've gone a little bit over, simply because you were so great. So thanks a lot. For all the dads listening out there, this will be up on our website, thefatheringproject.org, in the next day or so. When that comes up, please share it with your friends and let your friends know that tune in and have a look at this webinar from Duncan. It's been fantastic. Thanks very much for all your questions. Sorry we couldn't get through them all. And you have a good night, everyone. Thanks, Duncan, for your fantastic presentation tonight. And hopefully, I know that everyone will have enjoyed it. So thanks a lot for tonight, everyone.
Thanks very much, Wayne. Thanks for doing all the buttons, mate. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. It's been a real privilege to join you. Cheers.